Welcome to today's Conjugate Chat. With us is Matt Brown. For those who don't know, Matt trained with us about 7 years? You've been here?
Yeah, 6 years, I think.
Yeah. And what we're trying to do here, we're trying to give you the athlete's perspective who are on the receiving end of strength and conditioning, and hopefully to learn from Matt as a professional athlete. Matt, so before you got to Westside, how was your image of strength and conditioning? How important was it to your training?
Well, I always looked at it as a very important piece because from the beginning I knew it was something I could control. I think like I told you before, I was a personal trainer before, so I thought I knew strength and conditioning, right? And I had some certifications and stuff, but I always knew it was something I could control myself. I didn't, the books and stuff are out there, all the knowledge and the information is there for the taking. Unfortunately, there's a lot of research, knowledge, and or junk out there overall, right? So I certainly dug in deep myself. Just didn't realize I was digging in the wrong places.
It's very, very, very easy to do.
Easy, yeah, very easy. And like I said, I knew from the beginning there was a few things that I could absolutely control myself, and that was my mind, my diet, strength and conditioning, who I surround myself with, right? There's certain choices that I could make myself. The techniques are just simply a matter of time and, again, surrounding yourself with the right people that support that. But yeah, the overall total skill level, the actual sport form was something that is just a time thing, and a lot of genetics and stuff that come into play with that. But to be able to manipulate the strength, the conditioning, diet, things that I could 100% guarantee control myself, I always dug as deep as I could into that, thinking that I was digging in the right places. But
that just because you had an interest in strength and conditioning?
Yeah, but I guess like most things, once you kind of get past the initial phase, like the initial part is always the hardest, right? Where everything seems so complicated. I got past that and my interest grew right away. Then sort of like, your first time lifting weights sucks because you don't know how to lift weights, and and you see other people lifting heavy weights, you don't know how or why it's working, and then once you get into it and you start getting in your groove, you start figuring things out. And I think it's the same thing when the first book I read, it was probably whatever it was probably some book that didn't really wasn't right or anything, right? But it didn't make any sense to me. And then you read another one, makes a little more sense. Start getting into the ecosystem and digging deeper and deeper and just going down that rabbit hole. And the more that I learned, the more I liked it, and the more that I realized I didn't know.
Well, that's the biggest thing I've learned is that the more books I read, I'm like, God damn, dude, I don't know anything.
Yeah, you start thinking you're real smart, and then you read Super Training again and realize you're a dumbass, right? Or like you just gave me the Bondarchuk books the other day, and
I mean, there's so many, and then there's so many varying thoughts that one go against the other, and you're like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to choose?
And the fact is, it's all so simple, right?
Yeah.
Especially like when you get like specifically like the Bondarchuk books, right? Oh, wow, it's awful simple to this guy.
Yeah.
He makes it. And I think probably the best quote I ever heard, man, was that not too long ago. So principles are few, methods are many. And that's the principles are pretty damn simple, right? We all know the principles.
I think we're in the age right now, especially with social media, that we've gotten so far away from basic biology and basic understanding what an organism is that the methods don't justify it, to where if you get stuck on such a linear program or method to where nothing we do, everything's dynamic, everything moves, to where you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And I think that's what people don't understand. And you can read all these books, but if it's not based around a dynamic system, you're screwed.
Right.
And people don't have that foundation.
And well, one thing I've noticed too when we talk about reading all these books is that a lot of them are applying their methods, but they forget the principles.
Yeah.
And that's why I love that quote, principles are few, methods are many, right? Because if we are going to the same destination, then we can find a way there, right? But like if my principle is getting there by walking and yours is by driving, you know, we'll still get to the same place, but the destinations end up different.
Yep.
Right. And so, it's, yeah, you know, just the principles, man, like they're not that complicated. Yeah, they're out there. But these books water it down, you know, and especially, you know, some of the greatest books water down. Super Training, right? Waters the shit out of it, right? And confuse the hell out of you. And, they, you know, but that's because, you know, they have a deeper understanding. But yeah, you know, I just think when we get into the strength and conditioning, as long as we keep those principles very sound, you know, we can all find our own methods to get there.
I think the biggest thing, and I learned a lot from working with you, is that you question a lot of stuff, not in a negative way, but in why. Like, and I think that's an important thing that coaches need to be kept not on their toes, but you got to justify what you're doing. And if it's not benefiting you as an athlete, then why are you doing it?
Right.
And I think that's a big thing that people forget about. And that's what I wanted to bring in. What was that one of the reasons why you ended up at Westside? Because you came just before I came in, and I wanted to know, like, what was the initial, why did you end up coming to Lou or to Westside?
Well, why did I end up coming here? You know, the first time I ever walked in the door here, I had no idea what it was, right? And that was long before, you know, I even started coming for regularly. And I had no idea who Lou was, and I had no idea what Westside was and the beast and the monster that it was. And then I came back, actually. So, you know, when the first time I came here, I was like, some shitty garage, grungy gym. I was like, why do you care about that, right? And then I came back later because my friend actually gave me, the guy that I was training with, he gave me the book Super Training. And I think I came back and somebody, I can't remember who, but somebody told me like, oh yeah, that dude, he goes down to Westside, like Verkashan or Melsif. I mean,
Yep.
They're like, yeah, he's been to Westside a few times. I was like, wait a minute, that shitty garage, grungy gym that I was at? And they said, yeah, that one. They said, that's like, you know, world-class gym. People spend their lives wanting to get in there. And I thought, well, I could just go in there, you know, because Louis likes fighters. So I came back and then said, yeah, but I don't know if I ever even told you the when I first came back and I just walked in, you know, and I was a little nervous, like all these big dudes around. And then Louis came up and his nose was bleeding and ears were bleeding and he just wiped the blood off his face and he said, hey, good to see you, man. Come train. I thought, man, this is my home. You know, it felt home that day. And I've always been the kind that I like that nervous feeling. I believe that is, you know, that's something that I always chase towards, right? Is that fearful feeling. And I got that feeling a lot at Westside at the beginning, you know, and especially when we started training together, I'd be like, fuck, man, what am I doing today?
Yeah.
What kind of stupid thing are we going to do, right? And I didn't understand the system, but as I learned the system, you know, then that fear became, you know, it's easier to justify, right? Because at first you're just afraid, just saying, damn, we're going to do crazy work, I'm going to be sore. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do a crazy workout and sore, but it's going to give me this. So now I'm going to run towards it even harder.
I think that was when you came, was at the start, when I was working with Lou. And this is when Lou has turned my world upside down and what I thought I knew was strength conditioning to where...
Done that to a lot of people, right?
Yeah. He gave me a basic physics books, the Book of the Five Rings, and Science of Practice of Strength Training.
Nice.
He gave me these 3 books and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you said something on the first week that we worked together and that changed my perception completely, was that usually when you come out of college or whatever, whoever you learn from, you become a little bit of a dictator. You don't understand it, but you talk, not to athletes, you kind of talk down, you're going to do what I say. And you said that I'm a professional athlete, that I'm going to try to get as much out of this because it's on me to become better at my sport. And I'm like, I never thought about that. I'm like, if you're going to half-ass it, you're not going to affect me, you're going to affect yourself. And then that's when Louis always told me to train the athlete as they are, with their own temperament, not with yours. And those two kind of collided. And I think you are the genesis for basically our fight program now, that we work with people because we tried and learned a lot of stuff along the way, but it was always to make better athletes. And I think one of the biggest things was that not being a yes man, and then you asking questions, and that combined into where we actually got honest answers. And I think that's where a lot of coaches screw up on. They tend to agree too much with athletes,
Yeah.
and they're afraid to go, hey, slow your roll.
Right. It's a very interesting dynamic, especially for fighters, right? Where it's not a team sport. Like on team, you're obviously you can have your own guys, but you're paid by the team and you train with that team coach, right? And you're doing, the same as everybody else, and especially in college, I'm sure. But our dynamic's a little different, right? Because I pay you to make me do things I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And on the same token, I'm the CEO and I could fire you any day.
Well, and that's a very, very good point that you bring up, and which I think if you could elaborate on about being the CEO of your own body, which I don't think people or athletes especially don't understand.
Well, I think once I came to Westside, I think I learned that better than anywhere else. So I just came from a different place. I won't mention any names, but the guy was a genius strength and conditioning coach. He's written many books. We all know. You probably know who I'm talking about. But the culture was terrible, right? The culture was really, he was just a nerd genius guy, right? There was no push in the gym. There's no hardcore training in the gym. So that's when, around that time, when I started realizing, like, I can, as the CEO, I get to decide who's around me. I create the culture, and this is my business that I'm building. And when I do that, I have to hire people that contribute to that culture. And that's exactly what you're talking about, where you train, the athlete his way, because it's his business. He's the one that has to step in there. But if the business needs a certain thing, it's also your job to step in and say it needs a certain thing. That's why I say I pay you guys to make me do things I don't want to do, because, of course, I've had coaches before where I come into the gym and they say, what do you want to do today? I say, well, I want to go home and eat ice cream and watch porn. I don't really want to be here sweating with your dumbass. So it's not really about what I want to do, but that's sort of a joke, but but realistically, I think we just coincidentally meshed, right? I came to the right place, right time. Me and you, we meshed pretty well. I think there's a lot of guys. I recommend to my athletes now, like, sit down with your coaches and decide. Write it out, like, say what you want to do. And that's where I talk about having a mission statement and having a business plan. I mean, you could legitimately write down a business plan. Like, you are a business, and you got to have a marketing strategy, promotion strategy. And it's not for everybody either. There's certainly athletes that they're like, hey, I just want to go test myself to fight. Like, there's just testing my martial art. I don't care about marketing. I don't care about strategy. And I said, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't expect to get paid for that. Don't expect your business to make money. I mean, there's lots of nonprofits out there, and that's essentially what you're doing in that case. And you're hoping that you kind of hoping for the best, right? And hoping that your martial arts are good enough that they speak for themselves. If you want to, really do something, I mean, you could look at the top of the food chain, right? Conor. I mean, we see this weekend's fights might end up selling 2 million freaking pay-per-views, and I think if you could probably, I don't know if Conor has specifically done it, but you could probably break down like a mission statement, a promotion strategy, a sales strategy, a marketing strategy. He certainly has people around him that are building those things out for him, whether he's actually doing it himself or not. But he's created that staff around him and that culture around him that, it's more, he has a true business.
But he's definitely changed the format of how you go to the top.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he also, you got to give credit where credit's due. He certainly spoke for himself too, inside the cage. With his actions, certainly spoke as loud as his words did. I mean, when you knocked out Aldo in 13 seconds, his whole world changed. Yeah. Right. If he didn't win that fight, it would be a different world right now. Nobody'd be talking about how great Conor is. And we'd still be like, wow, he's got a great mouth, but he can't win a fight, I
think he surrounded himself with the right people that kind of helped him shape to where, okay, this is how far he should go. Because the whole thing is incredibly smart. Like to where once you can get, even from the press conferences onwards, like how many people tune in just to watch a press conference when he talks? It's crazy.
Right. And that's again, when you look at an entire business, I mean, that's part of the promotion strategy, right? Like look at Nike, they have a promotion strategy. Whether you agree with it or not,
people are talking.
Yeah, people are talking, and their stocks have went up. So, and that's not because of their product, which like our product is stepping inside the cage and fighting. But how you promote that, is different.
What do you think strength coaches get wrong, especially when it comes to mixed martial arts?
I think the number one thing that strength coaches get wrong is they really, a lot of them focus too much on, the strength side, the strength and conditioning side, right? So the way that I look at it, everything I do from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed is how do I get myself into sport form, right? It's not about necessarily being stronger, being faster, like I want sport form, and that's not necessarily athleticism. That's not necessarily a number on a board or anything, right? Everything is sport form. And I think a lot of them don't necessarily. So when I say that, they don't necessarily see that goal. I think there's a lot of them, they get caught up in their own method. They get caught up in their own, like functional training or, these buzzwords and sort of the fluff, right? There's a lot of fluffy shit that they want to do. And ultimately, I have to say, is that going to increase my sport form in the end? And again, that's about having a destination. And how do we get there? There's a 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? But they all require a sharp blade. So let's have a sharp blade first, and we'll skin the damn cat one way or another, right? And that's where, I think Westside gets it right. Is everything is about that sport form, right? Where everything we're doing is contributing to that, and there's no wasted energy. Whereas there's a lot of places I've been, a lot of training I've seen where they're not contributing to that. And the UFCPI, I think, is doing a really great job of analyzing what is sport form and how can we contribute to that better. I think their analysis book was really amazing. I think they really are hitting it head on. But there's maybe a little bit of over-analysis too, right? Because you can't necessarily correlate everything to winning and losing in martial arts, or you can't necessarily analyze it and say there's a correlation that your analysis was raised here and you won, right? It doesn't necessarily work that way. So I think that's the most complicated part. I've said it a million times. A lot of people win in spite of their training, not because of their training. And I think every time I've won, I certainly attribute it to my training, and when I lose, I attribute it to my training. But it's not always true. If that was true, right, then I'd go on coke binge like John Jones a week before every fight because,
there's no rhyme or reason. You're just winning. Yeah,
he won, not because of his training, right? Otherwise, I mean, I'd be happy to go party a week before every fight.
What I've found is within the ecosystem or within the environment or culture of working with an MMA fighter, even though it's an individual sport, you are part of a team. And I think a big thing that gets fucked up along the way is the communication loops, to where when you're dealing with a bunch of alpha males, whether you like it or not, especially with each discipline, and to where everyone thinks that what they're doing is the most important aspect of your training right there and then, and that comes down to a strength coach. And to where you have to realize we're just a part of this pie. But the communication needs to go back to you as the CEO, to where if your jiu-jitsu instructor, your striking instructor, whoever, if they're not all talking with the strength coach, to where, well, then you got no idea where you're at. Or we're both trying to, if you're doing...
And that's, so yeah, exactly, to piggyback on that. And that's what I talk about. We're talking about getting into sport form. The strength that specifically needs to contribute to that. And that's where that communication feedback you're talking about is really important. And I think the way to do that, the reason it's so important is because, the jiu-jitsu guys and Muay Thai guys, I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with 1,000 of them that they're like, you don't need that strength, and you don't need this or whatever. Like, just do your technique. And then, there's one of the other big mistakes is the strength guys a lot of them try to do too much strength, right? They try to do too much strength and conditioning, and they forget about the technique. And that's when I talk about the sport form, is really putting those two together.
Yeah.
Right. You need to increase your strength. You need to increase your conditioning. You need to increase your skills, your capacity. I mean, there's a million things, right? But that communication, and again, to me, that goes back to the beginning. You're the CEO. You create the culture. If you have a guy that isn't, that's old school or, isn't a believer, then, he can come off the team.
Yeah.
You don't have to have him on the team. And that's probably the biggest struggle of being an MMA fighter, is creating that team of guys that are all conducive towards one another too. And that's how many businesses fail, not because of the leader, but because of the staff around them.
Because you're putting a lot of trust in the people. I don't think coaches understand that, how much trust has actually been given to them. And if you're not doing as good a job possible, well, then most athletes are not going to know that. They're going to just assume that, take it on merit, you're doing the best job possible. Especially if you're trying to make a business for yourself. And that's where I think that there's this line a strength coach shouldn't cross when it comes to publicizing what they do, or trying to caliber on the back or carry on the back of athletes to where, I'm working with this person. Well, what are you doing? Well, before I got into it, like, strength and conditioning was a terrible job, to where you want to get up at 3:00 in the morning, make no money, go to bed at 11 o'clock. Like, no one wants to do it. Sure. But now it's like MMA. Everyone wants to be a fighter. Everyone wants to be some sort of a coach.
I think they're probably one and the same, and it's the same that we see every January. Yeah. Right? Everybody wants to be in shape, right? Yeah. But they don't really want it, right? It's a difference between interest and commitment.
That's a big thing.
There's a lot of people interested in January. In July is when the people that are committed are still there. That's that's where I think we see a lot of that, especially in MMA, right? There's a lot of people that are interested in being a fighter, but then when you're coming up on the scene and you can't find a fight, and the promoter wants to pay you $500 when you should be worth $2,000 or whatever, and you got to fight this tough guy, and they're bringing you in as a sacrificial lamb to go into his hometown. Like, now are you a fighter? Yeah. Now are you interested in it? He's not going to pay your medicals. He's not going to give you travel. You got to drive there. Now how much are you wanting to be a fighter? And you're going to be booed when you go there, and people, going to tell you how you're getting knocked out. And, now how much are you interested? You're not making any money off of it. You spent your whole purse on driving there. Yeah. And they're not going to give you a sauna. Like, you got to find your own. And, they're going to try to set you up, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I've been through that 1,000 times. And it's like, now do you want to? It sounded all fun, right? When you're going to fight at the local bar, and you fight some guy that from down the street, he sucks, and you're going to get laid tonight because you're going to beat this guy up, and you're the big fish in the little pond, right? Sounds all glorious, but that's an interest. Yeah. Right? A commitment is saying, look, I'm willing to do this for whatever I got to do.
Willing to be broke and go through the
go through the grind. And I think it's the same, in MMA fighters, and I think it's the same in pretty much every job, right? Like a lot of people are interested in the results, but are you committed to the process? Yeah. And you see, how many people are interested in having a Lamborghini? Like, every guy, right? But the reason that we don't have many Lamborghinis around is because people are not committed to getting Lamborghinis, right? We just have an interest in it. I mean, same as me. Like, I'm very interested in having a Lamborghini, but I'm not committed to it. Yeah. It's not worth my commitment.
I want to run this past you. So my take on being a good strength coach for an athlete or an MMA athlete is that, one, you avoid SPP in terms of, there's no point me having you do punches because you're going to do punches all the time. Mm-hmm. But if I can make Matt Brown a better version of Matt Brown, to where if I train you generally, I'm helping you increase your level of adaptability to whatever your skill acquisition is. And I think most strength coaches I'm going to make you a better fighter. Well, no, You're not. I'm not going to teach you anything. But if I can make you a better human being, if I can make sure again, it comes back to making sure your joints are right, making sure you got the basic fundamentals. But if I can generally make you a better human all round, well, then I should have increased your level of adaptability. And I think the highest level of adaptability an athlete can have, the better you can perform.
And I think, that's probably even more true, right, in MMA, right? Because we have to be very adaptable, and we have so many different things we're doing. I mean, of course, if you're training like a hammer throw guy or something, doing one thing, right? Like, you don't have to be that adaptable. Like, you just have to be able to have a higher capacity of doing that one thing, right? And being able to, train that one thing. And that's, certainly you could probably speak more about that than me, but I feel like in MMA, I mean, you certainly have to be more adaptable than probably any other sport that I can think of, except maybe a decathlete or something like that, right? So, and again, I think that's, that goes back to, like, we're increasing our sport form, right? And if you're making me to better where I'm better when I do get on the mats, then my sport form is able to go up, right? So that's again where I think one of the big mistakes that they make is this is obviously going to be different for every athlete, and we have to analyze them and say where what does this guy need to be more adaptable? What does he need? Is it his joints? Is it his strength? Is it his cardio? Or what is it that he needs where he can spend more time on the mats and perform these techniques at a higher level? And I think it's different with everybody. There's certainly certain principles that are going to apply across the board, which are just a few principles, right? But when we get to building the guy into better sport form, I think there's a lot of guys, a lot of strength coaches trying to propagate their techniques. You call it functional fitness or call it whatever kind of bullshit. I mean, that's just the easiest one to come up with because we hear it way too often, right? Like I just read Tom Brady's book, and all he talked about was pliability. It's a word that his strength coach made up. Yeah. Right? Like, you're a more pliable athlete, and it's like, okay, well, where's the science, right? Define this. And funny enough, like, all I looked for in the entire book was a definition of that, and it never was defined. It was just a buzzword. Yeah, it's a buzzword, right? Yeah. And what's his name? Like Kelly Starrett wrote a whole book on it, like Supple Leopard book, right? And it's never really defined, right? There's, it could be taken very wrong. Like, if you're an elderly person, like, you have very soft muscles. That's not good. Yeah. Right? Like, if you're just laying around all day, your muscles get soft, and it's not a good thing. And you could be, some of the strongest people in the world have pliable, so to speak, muscles, right? Like, they're, especially like Olympic weightlifters, right? Like, they're very, very flexible, and, and flexibility is, not necessarily the only piece of that puzzle, but it's just an example anyway. I'm starting to rant on a side, but these sort of buzzwords and these, that you want to talk about getting that system, but is that, creating a better sport form, right? Is the athlete going to be able to perform his sport better? And that's not always the case. So becoming your own CEO, how high a level of understanding do you think an athlete should have of each element of their training? That's a great question. And that's not necessarily a clear answer. I think there's certainly a balance. Like, I've tried to understand everything too far, I think, and maybe some analysis paralysis. And, I've read every book you guys sell more than once, most of them. I've studied this shit, to the depths of the universe. And it's like, do I need to know this much? Because now every time I train, I'm like, is this the way or is this the way, right? And that's where now I kind of believe, there's a certain amount of education you should know to know whether you're hiring the right guy. And that's all you need to know. Let him, deal with the details. Yeah. Right. But you need to know that you're hiring the right thing, right? Like, you should understand Muay Thai enough that if you have a Muay Thai coach, that the guy's legit. You should have enough of an understanding of strength and conditioning that if the guy's legit, right? And that's not even, you don't even need to know that much. Like I would know if a guy's West Side Barbell certified, like, he's a good coach. Like he went through some sort of process. Now he may not mesh with my culture still. He may not personality wise be the guy that I want, but you know, that's certainly a good prerequisite, right? Or
How important is that personality?
I think it's maybe more important, to be honest. And that's, I think that's, if I've made a mistake in my career, that's where I've probably, in terms of being the CEO, I would say that's probably where my biggest mistake is. I never looked at personality. I think I got lucky when I came to Westside with people like you, where we mesh well. But a lot of the guys I've hired, I've skipped past the personality part. And I was like, look, I can just deal with the personality. You got the credentials. Let's make it work. And
What was the negative impact of that, do you think, on you?
their personalities, you know, certainly I think to be really good at anything, you certainly have to have a strong personality. And you know, your personality is going to be unique. I mean, you know, just doing the stuff that we do, it's going to create some insanity in your head, right? So I think it's caused a lot of problems, man. You know, these guys, they're really, you know, could be narcissistic or egotistical, selfish, greedy, different things like that, which for an athlete is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like it's not bad to be a narcissist if you're a, you know, world champion athlete. That may not be conducive towards your life, right? Maybe hurt you, you know, in your home life and, you know, in the long-term things. But I mean, most champions are very selfish, right? So that, you know, there's not necessarily a bad thing for that. But so if I look at, you know, like I need to hire a wrestling coach, for instance, right? The Olympic gold medalist may not be the best guy. Like he's obviously put his life into himself. So he may not be the best guy just because his credentials are there. So I need to look at the personality a little bit too. And maybe that's not the Olympic guy, the Olympic gold medalist, right? And then the other part of it too is, you know, their personality has to be a giving, you know, and caring relationship. And for me, I'm at the way I look at it now, I'd rather have someone care and only be 50% good than not care and be 100% good, right?
I got you. Yep.
Right, that passion and caring. And the reason for that is, like I've talked about in the past, if we all know why we're doing it and it all feels good and we all mesh together, then the how part can kind of be hammered out as we go along, and we can figure that out. And that's, I think, sort of a part of having a long-term relationship with guys, because the how just, you know, builds itself. Like if you know why you're building a house, you can figure out how to build a house.
Yeah.
If you already have a big house and you don't, you know, a beautiful house, and you have no reason why you need to build another house, then, you know, you're going to build a piece of shit house.
Yeah.
But if you're like, look, I need a house for this reason because I need a fucking roof over my head, you're going to figure out how to build a house. And then get knocked over, you build a better house. And knocked over, you build a better one.
So if you're going to give out tips, just say for an athlete listening, if you're going to hire, okay, I got a fight coming up, I want to hire a camp or I want to hire coaches. What would you say to athletes? Now we'll aim towards strength and conditioning, but if they're going to hire someone, what are the few fundamental questions you think they should ask?
You know, I think the simplest thing is, you know, are you on the same mission as me? And this what, you know, it's a mission statement, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be, you know, are you on the same path? Are you on the same journey? You know, if your journey is headed in the same direction as mine, then we can work together. And I think that's the most fundamental, core, basic thing. I mean, again, if even if they're not, you know, the most credentialed or the most educated, those things can be worked out, you know. But look, if we're on the same journey, like, you know, you want to be the coach of a world champion and I want to be world champion, look, we can figure out how to make this work, right? As long as I think, you know, it's just important they understand that they're working for you, or at least with you. Yeah, I don't like saying working for you, right? Yeah. Because, you know, you're really, you know, working together. And I think that's the important thing is, you know, getting them to understand, look, we're a team here. You know, you're not working for me. I'm not working for you. We're a team. And we're doing this to again, the end goal is the sport form. if that's your end goal too, for each fight, right? That's your end goal, then we can work together. If your end goal is, to propagate your method, your
self-image,
your image, or you want to be social media famous, you just want to get laid, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. Look, I mean, we all got to have a business, and if that's what you want in your life, that's perfectly fine. But that may not necessarily mesh with what I'm doing for myself. So I think it's not a that it seems that people have a hard time figuring out this conversation, but or figuring these things out. But all you do is have the conversation. Like, sit down and talk. Look, what do you want with this? And like, I'm opening a gym right now, and when people come to me and they say, "Hey, man, I want to work for you," whatever, I sit them down and say, "What do you want?" Right, and it's amazing the answers you get. Right, it's really amazing. I say, "What do you want out of this?" Right, you think it'd be a simple thing, right? And I've come to find that I hire the people that generally their answer right then, like if it doesn't start with I want to help other people or I want to give, it's got to have something along the lines of giving out, and not something coming in. If once it becomes then it's about them. If their answer has ends up there, then they're not working for me. If it's something about output, then we can work together, because that's my mission. That's what my business is about, is giving, right? And helping others come up. And that's not going to work with someone that wants something for themselves. I had a guy just the other day say, I want to open my own gym sometime. I'm like, well, why would you even be sitting in front of me right now? Go open your own gym, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why would you expect that I would hire you,
Do you think that strength coaches, outside of the role of strength conditioning, should act as an athletic buffer or regulator on training to a head coach, to where if they're assessing and monitoring all aspects of training, to where you should tell a head coach, hey, this athlete may need to back off.
Yeah.
More so than what they just do.
I think the strength coach generally has a lot more science, and should at least, right? have a lot more scientific knowledge than the technique coach, because and that's something where I've learned, especially like open a gym and everything. I'm like, I've been obsessed with the science, and I love learning all that, and I want to do that sometime in my life. But each aspect of an athlete, I mean, is an abyss. Like, it's a never-ending hole. We can certainly scratch the surface, and it's just a valley, right? But just an arm bar itself, right, or just a punch, just a kick, you could take each one and you go down a whole abyss, right? Like, you could spend your entire life. Like, I just did a presentation last weekend on just how to punch better, right? Just one technique, and I did an entire presentation on 60 minutes, and found tons of science on it, and learned a few things along the way myself, right? So that's just one technique. You could do that with a deadlift, a bench press, a squat, right? Like, these are abysses. These aren't, just things you scratch the surface and think that about. So, I'm probably getting a little bit off track here, but I think, when all these things, you have to know your core competency, stick to it, and dig deep into it. The technique coach needs to be open-minded to that and understand there's a reason that's part of the science of a strength coach, right? And as a technique coach, like, your job is to know the techniques to the fullest extent, and know your athlete, know his techniques, and let's improve on building those techniques. It's not your job to monitor and analyze the athlete, like his HRV or his, recovery, his readiness and trainability and things like that, because that's a whole abyss in itself. Like, leave that to the science guy. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, well, from people that we've worked with, you have rather big personalities, some of them, and then they're very, very good in what they do. And I feel that some coaches are afraid to say, no, you're wrong. Like, it's okay to be wrong in the right setting, but if you are not at least voicing your opinion, like, hey, I am convinced this athlete's overtraining. Here's my objective data, not subjective, it's objective. Here's where it's going wrong. So if you keep doing this, it's going to lead to overtraining or an injury or risk of injury goes up. But I feel that either A, they're intimidated by the environment they're in, they don't want to be wrong, they don't want to have a negative connotation beside them telling you, hey, you got to back down, because your job is to go. I'll go, go. It's our job to go, hey, you got to take it easy, and here's why. And I feel that that's how a lot of people get injured, because strength coaches are afraid to step up to the plate. And if you get fired for doing your job, well, then at least you've done your job.
Yeah.
It's way better to do that than to stand back and go, yes, here, let's train you. You just came through a hell of a jiu-jitsu session. You just did a conditioning session. Now I'm going to put you in the gym and work your ass off, and then something goes out. Like, either way, you're screwed. You might as well be screwed on the error inside of your job.
That's a great point. Yeah, because, and that's where things certainly get complicated when you have, I guess even more so in these individual sports where everybody wants to take the credit, and a lot of guys would probably, if you're in this again, if you're in it for the wrong thing, if you're in it for yourself, then it's not about doing the job, right? Then it's about yourself, and you're just going to try to figure out how you can keep fitting in, and you may be trying to fit a square peg into a circle, right? And so I think, again, that goes back to, look, if hiring the right guy and having the right culture around you, like, this guy is pure and he's here for the right reasons, then we can make it work, and we can figure out the how, right? And if the guy's, he needs to be a part of a culture. That's what you're building as a business. You're the CEO. You're building a culture. The strength guy has to be in tune with the culture of the Muay Thai guy. And the Muay Thai guy has to be in tune with the culture of the Jiu-Jitsu guy. And you've been around me long enough. I mean, this is a very, very difficult thing to do. And it takes a long time for everybody to build that trust, and it takes a long time for everybody to become friends on top of being different coaches. Yeah. And again, I can look back on my own career and I can see things where I've made these mistakes. And I think that's, staying in one place and building something goes a long way for that. Yeah. And, going out and trying to search for the next best thing is problematic. And this is why, again, like, you start with a core foundation and you can say, this is the culture I want, and we'll figure out the how, right? This is why I want you on the team. This is, you're on the same mission as me. We can figure out the how. But trying to constantly dig into this how, that's where if I will use my own example, I always be searching, like, oh, he knows how better than he knows how, and he knows how better than he, rather than just building a group that is in tune together. And that, again, I can really use my own career as that sort of a lesson. Now I call it the unicorn fallacy. Right? Yeah. We're searching for that unicorn. It doesn't exist. I think Musashi said it best. Everything is within. That's where the answer really is. And if I'm the CEO again, and it's within me, and I find it, I can trickle that down to the next guy and the next guy. They all ultimately, even if they're in it for the wrong reasons, they all want you to succeed, even if it's for their own reasons. Yeah. So, you can use that for your own good and use that to build your own brand. And you just got to know through probably multiple conversations, but you just got to know that that's what they're here for. And I think that's a good trick or a tricky part to learn as the CEO of any business, right? Is how to utilize your staff properly, right? So you build the staff, and they're on you're going to assume they're on the same mission, but say you start to think, well, maybe a guy's wavering, right? You can still utilize him, right? Yep. And I think that's an important thing that it's very difficult, especially for a young athlete, to learn.
One thing that I've found, especially when we all work together, is that when you look at other coaches, and like we look at a lot and we talk to a lot, is, again, you have that romantic view. I'm a strength coach with a pro athlete. I'm going to be in the gym. It's going to be the best method ever. But then you come to fight week, and then you realize, whoa, there's a lot more variables here. So you got to cut weight. And you're like, well, cutting weight, you should probably have stuff prepared for that. Regardless if you ask or not, it's my job to make sure if I can reduce stress, I'll probably help reduce cortisol because you got enough stress dealing with all the promotional side.
You were always
bullshit.
great with doing that too.
But
yeah, thanks
again,
for always helping that.
But you have to be dynamic. And that's the thing. You shouldn't be asked, like, if Matt Brown asked me, hey, can you pick up that bag? I'm like, well, I'm a strength coach. Why'd I pick up? Well, dude, you're a person too. Like, you got to do all the little housekeeping stuff around
That's
it.
why, again, you know, why me and you always worked well together. Like, we were on the same mission, right? Like you had a true passion for me winning that fight. It wasn't for yourself. It wasn't, you know, for to market yourself. So, you know, that mission statement like would probably be very similar. We never like sat down and literally wrote it out, but you know, we're on the same mission. So, you know, to you, it didn't matter that you were doing some, you know, housework like some woman should be doing or whatever, right? Like you weren't like, oh, you know, I'm not gonna fucking go cook that food for you. Like, you're like, no, what do we need to do so that you succeed?
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I'm fortunate, you know, again, you know, I don't think you were selfish about it. You literally just wanted to see the success. But some people may be selfish about it. But again, I can utilize them too. Like, okay, you want your own brand to succeed? Help me succeed.
Yeah.
You know, so I can look at people now and I can figure out how to utilize them a lot better. And I think it's important, right? Because, again, it's all about the sport form, right? If, you know, as a strength coach, you can do something up to a certain point to get that sport form. The week of the fight, like you said, you're not going to go deadlift on the week of the fight. So what can you do to promote that sport form, right? And that's why, you know, I like, that's why I like to use that term a lot more nowadays, right? You know, I think everything is the language that we use is so important. So this is how, you know, I start rephrasing the way I say a lot of things. And sport form is one of them, right? For instance, like when we go to the gym, then now I like to use the term martial skill, right? Not martial art, right? The art is what we express in the cage when we're fighting another man. Now we practice the art, right? We practice sparring, right? That's when now you're practicing the art. And that's why people like doing it all the time, because they like the art. They don't like practicing the skill. They just want to express themselves as artists. Yeah. Right. And it's like, I like to use the analogy, like if I'm playing guitar, right? Like I go to practice the scale. Yeah. Right. Now that's practicing the skill and I can do that 1,000 times. It's boring as shit. Now when I go on stage, I'm not doing that. I'm not going, I'm going, like making music, right? I'm actually expressing an art. And I think that's important to understand that dichotomy. Or that, you know, the disparity between the two, because you know, we need to know that we put the two together. Sport form is him expressing his art fully, right? That's what our ultimate goal is, right? So you know, circling back, you know, with the week of that fight, what do we need to do to get him so he can fully express his art? And if you're on that same mission, then it's all very simple, right? And everybody's willing to do what they need to do.
And after the fight, and correct me if I'm wrong, but win or lose, you should always analyze what was done up to it to see if you can improve upon it. But if you lost a fight to where it sucks, it's win or losers, but you can't take it personally to where, well, was it all my fault? As a especially strength coaches do this a lot, to where I got to completely change everything we've done because clearly it's my fault that you. But that's not the way you're in a huge league. I think probably one of the most chaotic sports possible. There's so many variables that can happen to where you could have the best game plan ever, get hit and you're gone. But to where I see too many coaches who blame themselves. I'm not saying that they're not to blame, but they go change absolutely everything and they go chase after the next.
And this is
greatest.
What you're getting at here. This is exactly where it goes right back to that mission, right? Yep. You're on the same mission. What the mission is large. Like for me, I'm a lifelong martial artist. This is what I'm gonna do to the day that I die. Like I'm gonna die on those mats, right? The contest, the competition, the expression of the art is a picture in time. That's a picture of where I was at in this lifelong journey on that hour. That doesn't mean it would be it may have been different an hour later. It might have been different an hour before, the day before, whatever, right? Every day is a new day. So again, I go back to the sport form. This is what we're trying to promote on that specific time. I want that picture to be the best picture possible. So, and that's called sport form. We're not looking, and that's where a lot of people, they get into, that's why fight camp. But then they don't do anything after, right? Because they don't have a larger mission, right? So their art is not going to be fully expressed. That picture in time is a picture of, like, say, a 12-week cycle, because that's just a picture of your camp. What did you do in this camp? It's not a picture of your lifelong journey. And that's why, that's exactly why, you know, I don't stop training, right? Someone like Louis is a perfect example, right? He's been doing this stuff. He's, you know, 72 now, right?
71.
And 71. And, you know, how many meets and competitions has he done? How many max outs has he done? And so you're seeing these constant pictures, right? So we're constantly able to quantify, you know, his skill side, right? His skills and his, you know, quantifying his numbers and everything are going up, you know, so he can express that art to the fullest, right? Because that picture in time of his art is going up all the time, right? And that's what we're ultimately looking to do.
So to wrap this up, if you had 3 books to recommend to people, what would those 3 books be?
Fiction or nonfiction?
It can be any book at all. But fiction is a lie that gives you a truth, so I'm always for that.
Right. Well, fiction would be Musashi, the big, long, 1,000-page book. Nonfiction, first would be the Book of Five Rings. Probably Seneca would be second. Letters from a Stoic. So that'd be 3 right there.
Cool. Matt, thank you.
Bam.
Right. We'll talk again next month.